Hello and welcome to the Sideline Live podcast. My name is Orla Keeling and I am the host of the podcast, where every week we bring you a brand new episode with guests ranging from Olympic champions to local heroes, coaches, support staff and anybody involved in the world of sport. Each week we will dive into different topics, including current affairs in sport, identity, skill, mindset, coaching, and also shine a light on those flying under the radar. So tune in every week for brand new episodes, new stories, and new insights you've never heard before. Okay, delighted to be joined by Mr. David Clancy. David, thank you for joining me.
Mr. David Clancy, so formal, Orla. Nice to be here. For context for everyone, we had a very casual conversation for the last 20 minutes. So then to get to the formal intro, nice. I don't get that intro all the time, but lovely to be here, Orla.
This is actually the first time we've had a proper conversation, but we've known about each other for a couple of years, and I sent you a random message last year in October last year. I was trying to get in touch with James Kerr and he'd mentioned he was speaking at an event. I said, I'd love to watch or I'd love to see you speak. Big fan of James. And he said, there's a guy, David Clancy, do you know him? And I said, I kind of know him. Don't really know him. Sent you a message and you very kindly invited me to an incredible event in London. So thank you for that. And the more I learn, the more I realise you've a number of feathers in your cap, David. So can you give us your elevator pitch?
I love working with people. So I like to feel my space now where I work is collaboration and connection of people. So my pitch, I work in recruitment for teams, staff development of teams, learning development of people at teams. And ultimately, the whole thing with the event, the ethos around that order is essentially to bring people together, create opportunities for them to connect and collaborate more. So, what I've been doing over the last couple of years since I pivoted away from healthcare and physio as a hands-on practitioner is ultimately getting people to work better together and creating more space and opportunities for that. But just back to James, I felt I had to give you the ticket when James was asking, because James was one of my headliners for the event, right? So I couldn't say no, because you never know it will go back to him. Kudos to James. What a legend.
Yeah, and I feel so bad. I never actually got to say hello to him at the event either. I was trying to catch his eye, and he darted out fairly quickly after his talk. Out of interest, for people that don't know, it's Essential Skills was the event in London. It was around a book launch for a book that you wrote. Tell us a little bit about it for the people that don't know that are listening now.
Through COVID, I set up an online course focused around soft skill development for physios, because ultimately I don't think we're taught it enough in college, and we only learn it experientially or from making mistakes or actually understanding the importance of how you interact and build connection with patients. So created a course over a year with bringing in lots of different mentors I knew from my network. Some I knew, some I didn't, and asked would they share a lesson on something non-technical, non-clinical to a cohort of students that paid for an online course. I then had an idea that I wanted to use it as a vehicle to be able to give money to certain charities. So I also had that kind of intrinsic motivation to do it. So the Learning Physio was ultimately really successful. We had like north of 60 students, lots of mentors kind of bought into the idea. And then when we finished it, the plan was to do another year or two. And I kind of went kind of hard, and I'm not sure. That was really good. And ultimately, I had a conversation with a couple of the mentors and Kieran Dunn, who was a big part of TLP, and said, I think it should be a book. I think there's a niche for this, not just for physios, but across healthcare and actually outside healthcare too. Again, the premise being soft skills. So ultimately pitched it to a big publishing house in the UK called Elsevier. And again, with the kind of bold idea of want to bring people together that don't know each other and get them to share. So ultimately kind of brought 60 people together roughly from around the world to collaborate and co-write pieces that were probably very different pieces for them to write, sort of different sort of areas from a chapter on cohesion to habits to well-being to career mapping to successes and failures. Very sort of different for people in healthcare. You don't kind of come across those books. Ultimately, again, all the proceeds, profits could go to charity. So again, I wanted to build on the course. And then when the book finally came out after years of graft and hard work, I said it would be great to bring the people that contributed to the book together, because none of them had really met in person. So I had an idea for bringing people together, and why not do it in a nice, interesting environment where a lot of people won't go to. So kind of unorthodox, pick the tape modern, always liked it. And so, yeah, it became an event, essentially. So online course became a book, became an event. That's how it's evolved. And then ultimately, already, after London, where I lived for a long time, I said, I need to bring it home now. Want to bring it back to Dublin. And I hadn't an idea that when I finished the Tate, even the next day, I remember flying home and I was reflecting on it and kind of went, I think that went well. I don't know if I want to do it again, though. It was pretty hard, stressful. But I did think it'd be lovely to do it in Ireland. So about 8 months ago, I said, sure, let's give it a go in Ireland. That's where we are.
Very good. What was the biggest takeaway for you for the event? And also, you said it went pretty well. It was one of the best rooms, events, and people I've met. It was the magical day, actually, to be honest with you, David. What was the biggest thing you learned from it?
In my world, there's a lot of competition and ambition, and ultimately, people are trying to get a step ahead. And I'm talking kind of high performance sport, right? The biggest takeaway, and ultimately what I wanted to create from an energy perspective and space perspective, was putting people from those environments together. But what would that look like? And what I'm really proud of, what I think was nurtured on the day, and probably because of the people that were there, and a lot of them were selected and chosen and invited for certain reasons, was there was an absolute lack of arrogance and ego in the room, even though you had some really successful people across different industries, not just high performance sport. And I really remember that. When I was sitting back watching the day, not even watching James, I did listen to James a bit, but I was watching the room most of the time, and actually you could see that people were sitting beside each other that didn't know each other. Maybe there was a lot of conversations, and ultimately my big takeaway really was, I need to create more conversations. And you always hear about it. You go to conferences and events, and it's always the conversation in and around the talks that were really interesting. And I saw a glimpse of that through the day, and I wanted to even create more of that. But it was really nice to just sense that feeling of, we're all kind of buying into something here, whatever that is, and we all want to help each other in some way. And ultimately, what's happened now, roll forward a couple of months, I think there's a lot of friendships that were born out of it in a way, whether it became a business venture or just a connection or just someone to lean on. I think that's really cool. I'd love to do more of that.
Mm. When you were sitting in the room, I remember at the end, I think it was the end of your event, your dad stood up and spoke, and spoke very well and was really lovely. And he said the book was more than just about being a physio. The title, I have my copy here beside me that I got at the event, Essentials for Physiotherapists. But it's not just about physiotherapy. It's really applicable to anybody that would read it.
Yeah, and it was designed that way. It says physios on the front because that's where I started my career, and ultimately that was the pitch for the target audience at a publishing house. But the premise and the real kind of strategy behind what it would look like was, this needs to be readable across other professions within healthcare and outside healthcare. And if you look at it, you'd like to think a doctor could get value from it, a nurse could get value from it, a sports scientist could get value from it, a business owner, a mother at home with children, a CrossFit athlete. Like, you'd like to think someone in the C-suite, it could speak to different audiences. Like, when we were building it together, we really thought about well-being, we thought about burnout, we thought about what does high performance mean? We thought about habits. We thought about building teams. We thought about what kind of quotes should be in it. So like even the quotes are a little bit more business orientated and a little bit more orientated even towards general population, because I wanted to have a little bit more of a wider appeal. So, I gifted that book to someone today because it's my business card now. And usually when I gift it, I put a post-it over the front and kind of say, I think, Erica, page 33 is really interesting for you. Because otherwise, if you look at the front, if you're not a physio, you might it's not for me, which isn't really the case. But that's kind of interesting. So my dad, the point he was trying to make, I think, was he comes from mechanical engineering and HR, and I think he would say, if you're into people and people management and understanding how to build relationships and understand yourself more, you should get value from it.
Mm. When you mentioned there, and I was going to ask you about this as well, you said the work and the space you're in can be very competitive and can be very everyone trying to one up each other and get a role, and there are an infinite number of probably clinicians and people in high performance sport, but a limited number of roles. Why do some people make it to working in sport at the elite level and others don't?
It's a great question. And just again, for context, I have a company that works in recruitment and headhunting for staff at teams. So this is real, you hate to say it, but a lot of it is who do you know? And that comes across a lot on LinkedIn when people kind of go, it's all well and good, David, that you say this, and this is great, but ultimately, if you don't know the right people, you're having a chance. And I'd say, yeah, that's partly true. It kind of helps a lot with timing. Have you created an opportunity at the right time? Do you know someone that can give you recommendation, word of mouth? But I also think a huge part of it is hard work and creating opportunities for yourself, even if there isn't one. I mean, a lot of my work comes from that. So I feel I work hard, and I feel I try to create opportunities or even ask prospective clients questions that might get them to think of something that could become work. And then I'll try to create it and step into it. And so a lot of the time, what frustrates me sometimes in my world is when people are applying for a job or looking for a job or reaching out to get a contact, and they haven't really thought enough about how to position themselves for success, or even thinking about, actually, how can I shape myself and frame myself to be a solution to all that person or team's needs and problems. And ultimately, they don't sometimes think about that enough. They just apply, or they just say there's not enough. So I think there's lots of different factors, but I do think for people that are trying to create an opportunity where there's not loads of jobs and it is hard to get the jobs, there's an awful lot of stuff you can do. We have to be really active and intentional, and you have to think about it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you say there's an element of you have to know people, absolutely. But I think in this day and age, you can put yourself and insert yourself because we have networking. We always had networking, but it's because it's online. Like, I know you through networking online. My housemates slag me. They say, for a woman that isn't in business, you're the best networker I know. But so there is a way of inserting yourself, but you say you have to have the initiative. You have to be able to position yourself. You have to be able to send a message without expecting a reply, or not even expecting or asking for anything. It's being smart and playing the long game in building relationships in the industry.
I love the long game there. And it's like what you say, there's people are more accessible now, and you can create proximity easier. Just it's where we are. It's the landscape. I just spoke to someone in Nevada 60 minutes ago. And after our call, I speak to someone in Phoenix, and yet I was in Dublin City this morning, right? So it's not hard, but I think what you said too about giving, not expecting an answer, and I've said it a few times recently, for people that give without taking score, or offer value, or try to help without you really feeling they're looking for something, they're going places. And I think the people that's why I share stuff on LinkedIn, right? Ultimately, yeah, I'm trying to get work, trying to find my people that are also willing to share and give and, be good teammates. So I think there's definitely ways to do it, Orla. And I would just say to people, like, you're proof of, I've done it, we've all done it. You can get to people if you try to think about how to do it the right way too.
When does it switch from being competitive and wanting to get the roles to giving back?
For the people that get that role, or
Or like for you, like you spoke about, you're probably, and you probably did at one point in terms of getting the bigger roles and working with an NBA team, but then you're so focused on giving back. When does that shift happen?
well, yeah, for me, I know probably a huge reason why it shifted, but I also think I think I have both in me, because I want to be successful, I want to win, I want to do well. So there's that side of me too. Like, I can never do enough, and I'm never, every day is a day, right? So like, I'm always kind of hungry to work really hard, and I'd never settle. It's kind of my style. It's always been that way. Um, would I would I run over someone to get something? No, I don't think so. I don't think I have that in me either. Some people do, and some people who have that, you know, fair play, and maybe that's where they get the multiple zeros in their bank account, right? It's so some people have that switch. I think the give back thing, because the people I admire have that in them too, and it's trainable and it's learnable, and obviously there's nature nurture there, and you know I've learned a lot about that over the last couple of years, and I've also, from in my world of, my previous profession, if we want to call it physio, there's a lot of giving back, right? You're giving back to your patients all the time, and ultimately when they give back to you, you remember that. And so there's a definitely, like, the law of reciprocity. I think when I've sensed that in people, I've gravitated towards them, and I've wanted to learn that, the dance between being competitive and wanting to win, but also wanting to give a leg up as well. And I think there was a couple of people at the Tate that have both, and they're super successful, but they bring people along with them. And I think that's such a killer combination. I'd love to see more people doing that.
Because that was one thing, and I probably should have said it in my first question. I was trying to nearly catch you on the hop. But the final, on one of the pages in your closing remarks, putting it all together, I had noted it here. Learn and give back was one of the main kind of headlines in it, and you said one of the most powerful ways to grow is to help others, and you finished it with, as we have always said from day one, learn and give back. Reminds me, I heard Andy Moran speak. For anyone who doesn't know, he's a former Mayo legend, potentially the next Mayo senior football manager. And he said his advice to a group of players, I think it was in Fermanagh, he said, if you want to be the best you can be, find a buddy to go with, because if you're trying to help someone else, you'll get even better.
Hmm. What's the point of learning something if you can't share it? If you're just keeping it to yourself, like, that's a selfish, lonely kind of game. And, like, founder, run some businesses, if you're not willing to be able to share and have conversations, like, what's the point? And, like, I think the whole thing, learn, give back. I've got 2 young children, right? So if I'm learning something, making mistakes, seeing something in someone else, passing it on, giving it back. Um, and yeah, a huge thing with that, uh, call to arms motto from the learning physio at the time was, a lot of the, say, mentors had learned things and then were giving back to the students. So they'd learned a lot, they had skin in the game, they were successful, but ultimately they were at a point too, and they're like, actually, want to give back. And some of them kind of got to that, to your question earlier, and had a little bit of wanting to do that earlier for whatever reason. Some further along in their career, right? But yeah, it's kind of a motto that we kind of came up with. I think I like it a lot.
The day in back in the Tate, just the environment and the culture that was there, extremely welcoming. I didn't actually really know anybody there apart from one or two faces, and very welcoming. And how important is not only the culture but the actual physical environment in cultivating that for people in an event.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think can be extrapolated to, like, any environment, right? Like, I'm lucky I get to go into different, performance facilities, training facilities, arenas, and I always kind of go in with a question, like, what's it feel like in here? What's the energy? What's the sense that you come away, you go, like, they're doing something really special here, or there's something not quite right, or what is it? And I think a lot of the time it's people. I think a lot of the time also you can help with that, with the space and what it is around that. So I think, like the Tate as an example, I looked at different spaces, and why I liked that space was it was open plan with a nice walkthrough, so there was lots of opportunities for people to connect and talk, and there was lots of nice ambient light and lots of glass. So I just thought there was a sense of, we're in a nice environment here, conducive to lots of conversations, no real barriers or pillars, metaphorically and physically, therefore it should work. So when we were trying to look at somewhere in Dublin, like firstly I said, I want to go to another art gallery because I like art. But the space in IMA, like the North Range and the Irish Museum of Modern Art, is amazing for all those reasons. Lots of ambient light, higher ceiling, actually wider space. So again, a little bit more space, again, conducive for dialogue and nice conversations. So I think that's really important. Like when I've looked at workflows and environments that, say, Premier League teams over the last couple of years, I'm always asking questions about like the design of the building. Like, did you structure this rehab facility like this for the players to be able to share what's really going on in their heads as to why they're not really doing the program today, or why is this facility built like this? Why do you have it like that? Because I think it's something that sometimes we think about, but we don't always think about it enough. So I think it's a great point you brought up.
Who's done that the best from who you've seen and where you've gone?
Yeah, I'm gonna put him on the spot, even though he won't even like that. Like Aston Villa, there's an Aussie there. I'm not going to share his name because that's not his style, but there's a performance director at Villa, and yeah, I've been there more than once, and I think what they've done there is just built a space that is open, um, and really you can see the thinking around. There's little pockets in the performance and training facility that create opportunities for players to sit down and have conversations with coaches or medical staff. There was thinking around that. So I mean, the first thing when I was going there, I went like, Premier League team, lots of money. You've got royal family out there watching training because one of them is a big fan of Villa. And I remember kind of going, what's with all these IKEA sofas everywhere? Like, why are can you not spend more money? Like, why is it an IKEA sofa? And Jeremy was saying like, just sofas around everywhere. People sit down, just gives opportunities to have a chat. I was like, good idea, good thinking. So, but Villa, I just think the workflow in terms of what they thought about, from what a player has to do to get onto the training pitch and rehab and the architecture, the light, I think they've done it really, really well. There's other clubs that have done it well, but that's one that really sticks in my memory. Yeah.
Yeah, that we mentioned it before we recorded. That brings up what Declan Darcy said in late 2023. The meeting outside of the meeting is the most important conversation. When you were like, you've a lot of experience in the corporate space as well. I don't want to dwell on too much, but just we hear so much about the crossover between sport and corporate. Can you compare elite sport and elite business or corporate sectors in the environment and the people?
Yeah, like there's I do have a lot of experience in the C-suite business world because kind of worked in it for kind of 3 years, right? And a lot of the time, initially, our first pieces of work in that world were translations from healthcare or sports environments to business, because ultimately, the business entities like those conversations, especially if you're doing team dynamics or cohesion or performance under pressure sort of sessions with their management team or whatever. Um, and ultimately, what they're both going for is sometimes different. The timing of what they go to is sometimes different. The pressure and external media sort of presence and scrutiny that brings is different. So there's definitely sort of huge differences from that, right? You go into a football environment, they have a game tomorrow night, they have a game in 3 days. So there's an intensity and pressure of time and the cadence with that. Now, of course, you go into a business environment and there's a P&L that's important and revenue, and they have to hit their numbers, and they're opening up a new retail unit. So there are a lot of parallels. Um, I think some things that I see across both are for the businesses I've worked with, some that I think are, I would say that have been, are really successful. There's a lot of pressure in both environments. There's a lot of expectation in both environments. They work hard across both environments. They burn out in both environments. There's a lot of systemic stress in both environments. Communication could be better in both environments. So it's funny, like, as much as people sometimes say, you can't really translate because it's kind of different, a lot of those kind of things are very similar. So you could easily go in and someone can do a managing pressure, and that works in both, or dealing with adversity, that works in both, or emotional intelligence, that works in both. So yeah, I really enjoyed working with like MDs and C suites, like with big companies, because yeah, they're the kind of their expectations and the pressure they put themselves under was so similar to if you were dealing with front office or performance directors at a sports team, you know.
If there's a couple of people listening, and I've even at one point was like, why don't I just, I don't know, go and try get a job at the NBA or something, and chase the big lights. And I don't mean that in a contradictory term, but really chase a dream of whether it's playing, coaching, working at one of these big, well-known clubs around the world. But what's the reality of that like when you're chasing a dream, when you're being on your own, you're moving country, and you're going into an environment that is a bit of pressure and is a bit of, you have expectation, you've got a deadline, whether that's getting an athlete back or you're trying to get back or you're trying to get your work done.
Ultimately, it's just really, really hard. There's a lot of grit, tenacity, perseverance. You need people in your corner. Like, what comes to mind there, I worked for a couple of NBA teams a couple of years ago, and I was ultimately watching and monitoring their European-based players that were drafted. So imagine a team drafts a player, and then the players move to Europe and could be playing in Belgrade or Athens or Paris, and ultimately they're playing there with the big goal to get a contract at the NBA. So they've been drafted, but they're stashed in Europe, getting exposure, getting minutes, dealing with a bit of expectation, knowing their contract and really where they want to go is over across the Atlantic. And I remember, working with those players, and I like flying over every couple of weeks. It wasn't the physical stuff. It wasn't the talent. It wasn't the ability to score points, rebound the ball. It wasn't the coaching. It was the mental and emotional stuff. It was is this player ready to make the jump? Can this player manage the pressure of going to that big city? Will this player be able to move away from everything that they know and understand and are used to? Even if there's some degree they move to a bigger club in Europe, but like the NBA would be a bigger jump. Can they handle the pressure? Can they handle the stress? And I think, there's loads of examples of players that have moved from Europe to the NBA and have been hyper successful. A lot of the best players in the NBA now are not American, but there's loads of examples of players that have tried to make it and either went to the G League, the league below, or have gone back to Europe and it didn't quite work out or stopped playing. So I suppose that example comes to mind because I think what it shows is it's hard, right? And if you have a goal, James Kerr, like lofty goal up in the clouds, you need to have one. I think you need to have a clear goal and reverse engineer from what the goal is and the steps to get to that. So like ultimately, if I'm trying to get work with a team in the States, which is not easy. I live in Ireland. They don't know me. I'm over here. An Irish person, why would they even consider doing that? You have to be able to know what you're offering and be able to try to go after and get it and create an opportunity to go over there and create that face to face if you can. So like so many different examples, but I think what I say to people now in my world that are trying to move from Australia or England or Europe to the States for that big job in the NFL or the NBA, I'd say it's great. Be clear on what the role is and why that role and why now or why in a year. What's the reason? And are there many reasons? And like, is it intrinsic or is it extrinsic? Or like, why is that feeding you? Where are you now? And what can you do to close the gap and create more proximity so that it's not so far away that you can kind of touch it? And then what I would say is, what can you do again to shorten that gap? And if that's to reach out to people that can help, or if it's to skill up in certain areas. So again, the stuff you can do. And like that example of people in Australia or UK that reach out to me all the time are like, I want a job in the States. Do you even know what the registration process looks like? Have you even looked at accreditation? If you want to work in one state is different to another state. Like you can't just get a job tomorrow. And oh no, I didn't know. Well, you didn't do your homework. So like do your homework and understand what's involved, because it sounds great, but like be that a player, a coach, staff, whatever, ultimately it always sounds great and the grass might be greener, but that's not always the case. And usually there's a lot of things to do to create what you might be going for. So yeah, long-winded answer, but that's kind of what comes to mind.
No, and it's applicable across multiple things there as well. One of the things that struck me at the event as well was the connection with the people there and seeing the common traits across. There was multiple different backgrounds. My favorite question, and I nearly sometimes when I don't have much time with someone, and we're passing by each other in the corridor, I'll nearly shout at them, what makes the elite the elite? What are the attributes you've seen, David, from the successful people you've met? What's the pattern?
I think they work hard. I think they work hard, but they work effectively and efficiently. So I think there's that real balance of understanding what to work on. So I think the people that like are the people that I'm looking at now that I think are really moving the needle, work on the stuff of where they can be really impactful and say no to the rest. So like how can you make the boat go faster? And what does that look like? So I think people that have really figured out that thing for them, could be two things, could be three things, but knowing when to say no. I think when you can really narrow your focus to that, which has been a challenge for me for years, I think the people that have cracked that ultimately become really successful. Look at an athlete, right? If you want to be the best hurler in Ireland or the best basketball player, the best football player, what do they want to be? I want to be the best hurler. That's the goal, and kind of the rest is trimmed away, and it becomes how do I get to the point where that's what it all feeds into that. So I think it's really understanding that, like where do you want to go, what do you want to do. So I think the people that have absolute clarity on that do really really well, and the people that have an engine and that can take hits, because it's never easy, you know, the road is bumpy, so the people that can take a hit and keep going, like the whole Rocky analogy, I think that's really really important. And ultimately I think you can also do really well, you can shortcut it with coaches and mentors. Like I spend so much time with people, like groups like you, fellowship groups, communities, coaches, mentors. I spent lots of money, I spent lots of time on people to help me with where I'm trying to go. So I think people, no matter how successful they are, nearly always have someone to confide in or to support in, or even if you're a hyper successful CEO at a big pharma, you probably find they have someone that's coaching them.
Mm. When you look then at the word success, and we've mentioned maybe different forms of success here, CEO of a big pharma, going to work for NFL, NBA, etc., etc. What is your definition of success, David?
Feeling you've achieved what you set out for, I think. So, you know, that was the target, that was the objective, I got it. Therefore, I think you can say you were successful. I don't think it needs to be more complicated than that. You know, I had an objective for a meeting yesterday. At the end of it, I kind of looked at my notes and I went, I think that went well. That was successful. So I think that's That's, if you're in a team, what's success? The metric is winning trophies, winning championships, being first. Um, Ultimately, the rest follows that, I think.
Mm.
And I think there's a lot to be said for that too. So success for me is, if you're trying to do something, can you get to achieving it? And if you can bring people along for the ride, it's a whole lot more fun too.
Mm. Different question. I've kind of brainstormed different questions I want to ask, and one of them that came up was, you've worked in sport, you currently work in sport, you have been an athlete. How has sport treated you, and how have you treated sport?
How has sport treated me? I don't understand the
Yeah,
question
and
fully.
it's purposely I try to keep it broad in terms of the way it can be it can be something that will give you a lot. It can be something that can
Yeah,
break certain people from a injury point of view,
yeah,
and it can be very challenging.
yeah,
How have you found that relationship with sport?
yeah. Good question. Like, I've always been into sport. I love sport. Like, my wife is sick of sport on TV. It's all we watch. It's all my son always goes to matches all the time. It's always, he's got a jersey or I have a jersey, right? It's a race to who has the most jerseys at this point. But like sport, so it's given me loads. It's given me loads of joy, loads of friends, loads of business, loads of proximity with my parents, with my sister, with my friends, with my kids. So sports give me loads of that, and it will continue to. When I was playing, like, I found it really hard. That's why I'm so interested now in lots of different things of sport, because like, I played loads of sports. I lived in Canada for a while, skied, played ice hockey, played baseball, grew up playing soccer, played a bit of rugby, played a bit of hurling. Basketball was what I was good at, right? Good in Ireland, not good in the States. But like, I played underage for Ireland, traveled, played in England, played in the States a bit. But like, the stress and the pressure got to me when I played basketball. Never mind injuries. I got injured, hence why I went into physio. Um, but ultimately, I was, when I was playing underage, never thought about it a lot, but when I was playing 15, 16, I was traveling around Ireland a lot, training a lot, playing club, playing national, playing province. And I know it's not a huge sport in Ireland, but when you play it, it's all consuming like any sport. And I used to think about it too much. I was in my head too much. And I used to put pressure on myself too much when I played. Like, David, you didn't score that basket, or should have scored more points, or why didn't you hit that shot? And even, like, I started to coach a little bit later on outside college, and I was really mindful of that. Like, when I went back a little bit later to the game, I always felt I could play better in training than in games. And that was always kind of interesting. So I've taken a lot, I think, from a lot of love and enjoyment that ultimately then became a little bit stressful and not as enjoyable. And I've seen it with a lot of friends too. And so when I see that in athletes, that they lose their love or joy for the game, I kind of go, what happened? Was it injury or was it something else? And when I'm now working in sport, I'm kind of really mindful of the mental side a lot, the mental skills, the psychology, the mindset, managing pressure, dealing with expectation. Because, like, even amateur playing on, in Limerick and in Ireland and Dublin, I felt that. So I would say it's given me loads and will continue, and it's a huge part of my life. But there's a lot of things I remember that, like, weren't always beautiful and lovely about it when I was playing. So that's just an interesting reflection too. I'm just going to interrupt you there, sorry, and sorry, Orla, it makes me think too, my children. So if I see my son, who plays every sport under the sun, right? Because he's following my footsteps. And if I see a moment when I feel he's not enjoying it, or there's or something's changed from an energy perspective, or he's not as calm, or he's not as relaxed, he looks stiffer, or there's the coach, I will really, I think, sense that early, and I'll be really mindful of it now, because I kind of lived having had coaches that put me under a lot of pressure, and it's not always nice, especially if you're kind of young. So if I see that, I'll try not to be the screaming parent on the side, but I've been a bit of that already. Like, he's miles away from 10. So yeah, I just wanted to say that because as a parent, I'm really mindful of that now.
Yeah, brilliant. You have ran a podcast yourself. You've hosted it. I love asking people who've done a podcast in any form of it. What's the biggest lesson you've learned from it?
What we spoke about earlier, right? Just how willing people are to share if you ask.
Yeah.
So like the biggest thing I got from it, um, we were watching TV earlier today, my wife and I, and Luke O'Neill was on talking about this bacteria going around in Ireland at the moment. And Mary, my wife, was like, "You had him on the pod," and I went, "I did. It's cool. I remember he was on the news all the time, and we had a great conversation. We're laughing loads, and I think the accessibility it creates." And then just the great conversations and ultimately lots of friendships too off the back of it that still to this day, years later, from the pod. So like even for my event, I'll invite people that were guests. So it gave me loads, and it gave me loads of ideas that I still practice today, be it books or be it models or concepts. I got loads from it. Yeah.
Brilliant. Paul Kilgannon gave me a question. Actually, I think it's from Oprah originally. What do you know for sure? And you can take that in any facet of it is what you think, whatever pops into your mind.
I think if you're kind to others, kindness comes back to you. So it's a bit qualitative, but I think that's what comes to mind. It's something I try to embed into my children and into my little man, that I think if you're kind to others, little man, it will come back to you. And if you're not kind, so like when you greet your friends at the door, think about how you greet them. Think about how you say no if you're busy. Think about how you say no if you're going off to training. Because I think that kindness will come back. They'll start knocking on the door more or less. So that's something I can see real life happens. And I've seen it for years in my world. I think people that ultimately are kind to themselves and others, it comes back to them.
I think that really goes back to the event and what it felt like. And even I remember I was chatting to a couple of people and they said, make sure you reach out now and keep in touch. For anyone that's listening that wants to go or just wants to learn a bit more about Essential Skills in Dublin, let them know what is it about and where can they find out more info.
Essentialskills.ie. You'll find a little landing page there with a link to an Eventbrite. October 28th, Tuesday. Picked a Tuesday because we thought, people working across sports should be able to make it. You'll have done your debrief on the Monday, whether you won or lost. It's going to be a pretty diverse group in the room. There'll be people from healthcare, sport, academia, some creatives, some business people. The core will be in and around intra personal kind of development. So soft skills, performance skills. Got some core pillars on the day we're going to try to touch on. These 5 C's. Again, if you look on the site, you'll see kind of we've touched on some of them: communication, collaboration, community. There'll be a lot on clarity on the day. And I think the panel, the people speaking, you being one of them, Orla, running a session, is really interesting. Really tried to think about having a great group of speakers to facilitate conversations through the day. And the space is amazing. Irish Museum of Modern Art. So yeah, October 28th, essentialskills.ie, and all profits I raise go to Down Syndrome Ireland and the Children's Health Foundation, kind of Temple Street and Crumlin. So know too that if you're supporting what is a pretty unique event, you're also helping children. So that's a huge driver for me for it.
Amazing. I'm conscious of time. We're going to move on to the sideline 7. It's the same 7 questions at the end of every episode. Question 1, David. I get the sense you are a quotes man, so I'm excited to hear what your favourite quote is.
I thought about it, and I'd say I don't know if you can curse on this, can you?
If you, whatever comes to mind, you go with it.
One of my favorite movies is Layer Cake. Daniel Craig, Michael Gambon. If you haven't seen Layer Cake, I've also read the book. I have it tattooed on my ankle because it's kind of a philosophy of mine, but there's a speech Gambon gives to Craig at the end when Craig thinks he's made it, when a deal happened. And he basically says, you're born, you take shit, You get out in the world, you take more shit, climb a little higher, you take less shit, until you're up in the rarefied atmosphere and you don't even know what it looks like. Welcome to the layer cake. And I don't mean it to be coarse. What I mean from that, I draw so much from that. It basically means when you think you've made it or when you think you're there, you're not. There's always someone ahead of you. There's always room for growth. So my mindset is always beginner's mindset, growth mindset, all that kind of Carol Dweck stuff. So I think so much of that can be read from that quote. So when I look at my tattoo and it says layer cake, if I've had a good day, I kind of go, all right, that's great. What's next? I can do more. I can give more. So that's what that quote means to me.
Amazing. Best sporting event you've been to?
It was a tough one, because Munster winning the Heineken Cup twice back in the day in Cardiff was up there. But Ryder Cup, Paris, I was there with my dad for a couple of days and ran beaten Tiger, and it was just an amazing event to be at. Just the whole Team Europe, Molly Wood, Rose. It was an amazing event. The atmosphere, like real team building thing. Loved it. Ryder Cup.
Did you watch Full Swing?
Yeah.
On Netflix? Unbelievable, isn't it? The Ryder
Yeah.
Cup episodes where they go to Rome is my favourite by a mile.
Yeah. So like I've been to a few opens now and like Wentworth and stuff, and like the Ryder Cup was just like, I'm not even a golfer. I just like it, but the Ryder Cup was like, I'm gonna try to get to Adair Manor in a couple of years for sure.
Oh yeah, I've put my name into the ballot already.
Oh, have you?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm hoping maybe, I don't know, might get a media pass. Enough about the Ryder Cup. Question 3: biggest setback or challenge so far in your career, and how did you react to it?
I face setbacks all the time and challenges all the time, so it's kind of part of the day to day. That's what initially went to me when I read that with my gut, and like there's been so many examples. Like one that came to mind for sure was I went to a conference back in the day in Stamford Bridge years ago, 2012 or something like that, 2013, 2012. And I then applied to a company where ultimately I ended up getting work with called Isaac Kinetic Medical Group. And after having done a trial with them essentially for a week, they're like, no, not for us. Kind of go back to Ireland for lots of different reasons. But that was a big setback for me. But it opened up my eyes a lot. And ultimately, I went back, learned, grew, took it on the chin, and ultimately I went back and got the job. So like proved them wrong in a way, and like ultimately it was a big thing for me because I kind of learned that if an obstacle is there, or if there is a no, it maybe isn't always a hard no. There might be another way. So that comes to mind because that was a big pivot for me in my career.
Amazing. Question 4: on the flip side, then, your biggest achievement in or outside of sport?
I think what I'm trying, to be honest, like what I'm trying to do now makes me happy when I think about it. I don't say it enough, but like what I tried to do with the course, the book, and now the event and another event, knowing I'm doing it not for monetary reasons. I'm not doing it really just for reputation. There's other factors that are driving it. I got to get those big stupid checks you see when you go on game shows at these 2 charities, right, with my daughter, of money we managed to give to them after the Tate. Got to go to Crumlin, where my daughter's been a lot. Got to go to Down Syndrome Ireland, for people hearing like this is true, and I got one of those big checks and was present to it with my girl, and like that means a lot to me.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing. What I do want to ask is, looking back, David, and I'm very interested to know, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Yeah, I would. I'd say find a coach or a mentor that can really help you. Like I've had a couple of mentors in the last couple of years that have really accelerated my career a lot, including my parents, my dad a lot in the last couple of years, my mom a lot, but also some people in the business world and in my world from London and Dublin that have really helped. So I didn't probably understand the importance and value and how much that can help at that age. And I'm lecturing a bit in UCD now. And even if they're postgrads or end year, final year, I've said to them all, find someone early, like now, that can help you. They've made the mistakes, ask them the questions. So, it might sound daunting at that age, 18, but it could help a lot. It would help you figure out maybe where you're trying to go, or even if you're not, you have someone that can help you through the way.
If I was to go back to 18-year-old David, and you said there, and when you said your biggest achievement, you're very happy where you are now. Was this where you are now the dream at the time? Whether maybe like the way I think of it, like playing or physio was just the vessel to where you are now, where it's maybe you're not necessarily in that vessel, but it is. This is ultimately what you dreamed of, maybe when you were at that age.
Well, I wouldn't say I don't know. I don't know what I dreamed of. I didn't really know what my dream was at 18 or 25 or 30 or even today. And I wouldn't say where I'm at is my dream yet. It's still evolving. I'm still curious.
Mm.
I'm not there yet. Um, so I'm getting there. I'm figuring out that I'm starting to do some stuff now I really enjoy and really love, full of passion, full of purpose. I think at 18, like I went off and did physiology for 2 years because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. It was either going to be medicine, psychology, physio, or even journalism at one point too.
Oh wow.
So yeah, journalism was right up there for me. So it could have been any of them. And ultimately I went to Carlo for a couple of years because I wasn't really sure. So it was only kind of after a couple of years there that I said, I'll do physio. But I hadn't figured out at 18. So it's okay to not figure it. I still don't really know what I want to do, and I still haven't figured it out. And you hear that and it sounds cheesy, but it's just true. It's just real. I think I'm getting there, but not there yet.
Brilliant. Question 6: who would be your dream dinner guest and why? And you can open up and make it a dinner party / essential skills event.
Hadn't thought about the rest. Uh, Someone who I really want to meet in person is Ed Milet. Ed Milet, part of a group with a guy with Ed Milet and a fellow called Andy Frazella. They're over in the States. Um, he's got a podcast. He's got some books, stuff about like max out and the power of one more. But Ed Milet would be someone because he's just done so much. You're googling him there now, probably achieved so much, but he seems to help and give a lot. Looks after himself. Talks about his family a lot. So a lot. I like a lot of the values he talks about. Um, so I'm not sure about the rest, but Ed Milet certainly jumped out to me there because I've learned a lot from just listening to him and reading his stuff over the last couple of
Yeah,
years.
I was googling because I've heard the name and I was like, where have I heard that from? And then I saw his artwork for the podcast and it's come up on Spotify. That makes more sense. Final question before I let you go: if your life was a book, which it kind of is, what chapter would this be called?
Still juggling balls, but less balls. So what I mean by that is people that know me will say, "Jeez, he's always doing something. He's doing loads of stuff." And my mom would always be saying, "Like, you're juggling so many things. How do you keep them going?" And I'd say I'm still juggling a few things. My own thing, my family, my work stuff, different work things, but fewer. So I'm getting better at kind of delineating what's important and what's not important, and saying yes to a few things with my whole heart and saying no to more. So I'm juggling less, which is a great place to be, but still juggling. Still
Very good.
juggling.
Well, David, very conscious of time. Thank you very much, and looking forward to the event in October. I can't wait to be there. And for anyone that hasn't bought a ticket yet, I'll leave the link in the description of the episode.
Thanks, Orla.